It's really important that, you feed the child and not ignore that your body also needs to nurse the child just as much as the child needs to nurse.
Yes, I worry about that for some professions. Like I'm thinking of a couple of times that I talked with nurses who have very long shifts, maybe 12-hour shifts. They don't have the time to leave their patients to go and pump. They can develop mastitis, which is a very severe infection of the breast that is very, it's fever-like. They can develop abscesses and need surgery. It's very serious. So the need to express milk while you're away from your baby is as critical of a biological need as, say, going to the bathroom. So I think it's important for us to recognize, like, maybe employers don't want to think about their female employees needing to express milk from their breasts, but they also don't really need to think too much about them needing to take a potty break either, but just know that it's necessary, and that's all you need to know, and let the women take care of it. We just need to raise awareness that it needs to be done.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And especially, like you were saying, there are a number of professions where you're not allowed a break, and it's not because your employer is denying you a break, it's just simply that there's not time. I, years ago, worked with another colleague, and she had really creative ways of pumping and in a truck. And we worked in environmental, and she was very creative with it, even though really, she didn't have the time to take these breaks. But the company supported her in these short breaks that she would go and just pump. And I think that those type of things are very critical for keeping your supply up, continuing the breastfeeding, and overall increasing the rates. And I was also, when I was looking at these other statistics, I was looking at a paper that pointed out different regions and their breastfeeding rates, and Minnesota having one of the highest rates in the North Central region, and they have the most protective legislation in the public and in the workplace.
Is Minnesota the one that has actual fines for workplace
Yes.
violation?
Yes. And that's the thing, is you may have the right to do something, but just because you have the right doesn't mean that you can, because there's nothing to back you up. And that's the problem with just having a right and not having legal protection.
The federal law, I know, in the healthcare reform bill, they're working on the what happens if you don't part of it.
Right.
It is actively a law right now that's in place, so you do need to provide time and space, but there's no other side of it if there's a violation. So I know they're working on that now.
Rebecca,
interesting to see what happens.
What's the next step in this bill?
So it's sitting on the House floor now, so it needs a vote before the full House of Representatives, and then we'll send it over to the Senate, and we'll start the process there again. So we'll need to go to a committee, probably Judiciary Committee on the Senate side as well, and then for a vote on the Senate floor. And if we can get positive votes on both the House and Senate floor, then it would go to the governor for her signature. And we did make the decision. We looked at a lot of different states and how they had come to their affirmative right to breastfeed in their law, and Kelly kind of hit on something with making sure that you had something with teeth was very important to us. We didn't just want some sort of proclamation that says breastfeeding is important, although it is, and we're happy to recognize Breastfeeding Month or the goals of healthy mothers, healthy babies, but we decided to put our right to breastfeed in the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act in Michigan, and that is it's an act that already has protections for gender and other protected categories, and it has teeth, it has a remedy, and we thought that was very important, instead of having to try to go and look through every individual place, whether it was a violation in a public accommodation, whether it was a violation in a public building or something like that. Having it in the Civil Rights Act, there is a remedy, and there's a place for women to go if their rights are violated.
Rebecca, are other states doing that in the civil rights? Are there other examples of that?
Many other states have done that, and also on the federal level, Congresswoman Maloney from New York has introduced something that's very, very similar on the federal level, so that we would have a civil right protection for breastfeeding mothers at the national level as well. So it's we definitely look to those models. And there are some who, there were some who asked the question, is breastfeeding a civil right? And for some of us, we think of civil rights, we think of gender, we think of ethnicity, we think of other things. But, as we've seen over the years, pregnancy, which is, again, something that can only happen to women, is something we had to define in our civil rights legislation so that women couldn't have, employment discrimination and things like this based on pregnancy status. And breastfeeding, we feel like, is the same thing. It's a gender, obviously a gender-related protection. And we actually took this bill in front of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission and asked them to take a position on it. And they did come out and voted favorably, unanimously favorably, to put their seal of approval. So we do have the Michigan Civil Rights Commission support for my legislation now. So it's moving forward.
That's really exciting. I love that it's a Civil Rights Act thing. I think that's fantastic.
How much time are we talking about? It sounds like a long process to go through.
Well, that's the interesting thing about the legislative process. Sometimes it can be very slow and take a lot of work, and sometimes it can be very fast, actually. And we've done all the background work. So I worked lots of local activists here in the community, and attorneys who had worked on the Ann Arbor ordinance have worked with me at the state level as well. So I think we've done all the background work, and like I said, we've put the legislation up in committee, gotten votes from men and women, Democrats and Republicans. It doesn't seem to have any of the traditional divides that keep things from happening in Lansing. This is a slower time for us in Lansing. We focus on, for policy issues, we focus more on budgets at this time of year because we have an October 1st fiscal year. So when we come back to policy bills, which will really be in September and October through the end of the year, I think this one will be able to rise quickly to the top of the agenda. It's just right now we're a little more focused on budgets. So,
Are you hearing many objections to it?
Not really.
No.
I mean, like I said, the questions that people asked in committee, I think, were the same ones that we heard echoed. And once the Civil Rights Commission did take a position in support, that sort of mitigated the concerns about should this really be in the Civil Rights Act or should it be somewhere else. So that was very helpful. And those other questions, that we talked through about age. And with a lot of policy, sometimes you hear the outlier stories that help define an issue. They're not the sort of general day in, day out. But we did have a woman who came and told her story of she had a son who developed a brain tumor and had been nursing and had been kind of more on solid food. But while he was going through chemotherapy and recovering from this brain tumor, he would only nurse. And this child was 3 and 4 years old. And again, that's not the everyday situation, hopefully, for many moms. But again, it just reinforces to me that I want physicians and moms to decide when the right time is to end breastfeeding and move fully to solid food. So I think having those kinds of stories to tell folks, really does help bring them along.
Kelly, wrap it up for us. What can the rest of us do to support breastfeeding moms?
I did want to share that the Coalition is offering free presentations for companies who are wanting to learn more about how they can support their employees or their customers. So we will come to the business and give a 20-minute presentation and giving all of the information and all of the tips. We can look at the situation in this specific unique workplace and let them know what we would recommend for their employees and for their place. And they can visit our website. They can contact me directly. We would be happy to help in any way. We are looking to support all of the breastfeeding mothers in Washtenaw County and to keep them going along and meeting their own goals for their breastfeeding lives.
Great. Implementing a lactation support program at your workplace has many benefits, both for your employees who choose to breastfeed and for your company's return on investment. We urge you to support businesses that support breastfeeding mothers in Washtenaw County. Thank you for joining us. Please visit us at www.motherfriendlyworkplace.org to learn more.